platform called WooCommerce, which is one of our prime products. And it's an e-commerce plugin for WordPress sites that basically turns your site into online shop. And I am responsible for writing automated tests and taking care of quality of WooCommerce and make sure that our customers can update WooCommerce without any issues when the release comes around. I'm super excited to be here. Thanks everyone for joining.
Great, and then we also have Saba with us today.
Hey everyone, yeah, super excited to be part of this. My name is Saba, I'm a data engineer and I work at Mapbox. I've been working remotely for the past 5 years now and really love it, and I find it really works for me. As for my work, I really enjoy and work with really big data sets. So a lot of the work I do is building infrastructure and that can scale with data and solve pretty complex problems. Yeah, that's me.
Okay, wonderful. Well, let's jump into some fun questions because I know you both have so much to share on the topic. So the first question, and we'll start with Julia and then go to Saba. How did you end up in a remote position? Did you seek it out or did it just come to you?
Sure. So as I mentioned, I've been working with Automatic for 4 years, and it was my first remote work. At the time, I just relocated from Florida, from Miami, Florida to New York City, where I currently live. And for me, it was sort of like a fresh start. I wanted something new. I wanted to have a new job and sort of like a new life. And I started to look for new work. I was actually, in fact, changing careers. I was not in tech before I joined Automatic. I was doing something else. But I started to look for different opportunities, and I knew I did want to be in tech because my education is in computer engineering, and I sort of wanted to go back to these roots. And I was basically Googling to see where I can find, different resources on how to get the job in tech, and I was sort of new to it. And I came across this platform called powertofly.com. It's the first one on the slide right now. And it's a remote, yes, they also in fact remote, but it's a recruiting company that works specifically with women, and their mission is to empower women in their remote tech careers. And they offer a lot of different options, including finding a job remotely. I created a profile there. They have some sort of like a vetting period or vetting process. You have to pass a certain number of tests, and that way, they can see who you are, what you can do, and they approve you and they start working with you. And I've been working with one of their talent agents, and it worked really great for me. I originally did not actually seek out remote jobs, but they're the ones who found it for me. And to be honest, at the time, 4 years ago, I didn't even think of remote work. I didn't even think that this is a thing or it can work. And they offered it to me. I thought I should try it. It spoke to me when I saw the job description that they sent at Automatic. I originally applied for tech support role, which I started with that role at Automatic. And yeah, that's pretty much how it happened. I found it through this resource that I recommend.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, and Saba.
Yeah, it's a little actually similar to Julia, how like I wasn't really looking for a remote job either. An ex-coworker of mine reached out to me, and he was working with a really small startup that was like experimenting with this like distributed company and like remote. 5 years ago, this wasn't like as trendy as it is now. So yeah, so he talked me into it, and I figured I would give it a go and just fell in love with it there. And so it was a tiny startup. I was like the 4th engineer on the team. And yeah, haven't looked back since and been working remotely since that job. But yeah, so I've changed jobs since that first one.
Oh, and you stayed remote in the next one as well.
I did, yeah.
Okay. And then, okay, do either of you have any other tips for people who are searching for remote jobs right now?
Yeah, so like the second job that I like at Mapbox, I actually found it on that GitHub remote job list, that second link on the slide. That's a really great resource because what I found really good about it is it goes like by company. So you can take a look at what companies are on there and actually pursue the ones that you find interesting, rather than like looking for job postings. So if there's a company that speaks to you and the culture looks great, like that's a really great way to check out the company and look at what job offers they have out there or job postings.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that sounds like a fantastic resource.
Yeah, I would second Saba's recommendation. These remote jobs GitHub repository is really helpful. It's actually being maintained by one of my coworkers. He takes pride in this repository and he makes sure it's kept up to date. He's always seeking for contributors. This is his baby. So it's a really, really great source to turn for remote jobs opportunities.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Yeah, and everyone who's with us today will get access to these resources with these links. So, okay. And any tips on what someone should look for in a remote position?
Should I go first or?
Yes, please, Julia. Yeah, we'll go in that order.
Sure, sounds good. So for me, I feel I feel like there are kind of two parts into this question. One is more on the technical side of things, and the other one is more on the cultural side of things of the company. So I'll start with the technical side of things. So when I started to work remote and now working remotely still, a lot of people, when they find out that I work remotely, they actually don't think that this is a real job. If some of you work remotely, you might relate to that, but they think that this is some kind of a part-time, or it's not paid well, or I don't know, something is not right with this work and with this person, basically. But so the reason why I'm saying is, what I think everyone should look for is definitely a real company that provides benefits that any other company that would provide if you would work out of the office, such as health insurance or vacation policy or life insurance and any other benefits that any other company which is non-remote will provide. That company that is distributed should provide the same kind of range of the social benefits. My second point I have is the company should reimburse you for the home office. If they're asking you to work remotely, you should have a computer, you should have a desk, possibly a monitor, keyboards, and whatever equipment is needed to for you to do the job. I think it's very important. As a bonus, our company also provides a co-working allowance, which is $250 a month. So we actually can go out every month and use this allowance towards co-working spaces. In some cities it works, in some cities it's not, depending on how expensive the city is, but $250 is what we have. And if you don't have, you don't have to go to co-working, you can maybe even go to coffee shop and work from there, but you can expense coffee because you kind of need to sit there and occupy the desk. My next point will be a competitive salary. Working remotely does not mean that you have to be paid less than if you would work at the office. For me personally, it's very important. Living in New York City is expensive, and I also have other options here where I can work, necessarily not remote. So it's very important, it was for me, to have this remote work that will have a good salary and competitive salary compared to other companies that are non-remote. The next point is very important, I think, is to have company meetups. In fact, I think remote work can really work if team members and if employees and coworkers meet from time to time. This is something that we also have in our company. We meet several times per year on different occasions in different teams. We also have a grand meetup where all the people come together once per year for a week. and have this face-to-face time. I think it's very important that the company provides that, so you could actually have this still sort of social connection to people that you work with. And then kind of the second part of this question is about the company culture. I think it's very important to find a company that works remotely, not because they want to, save on office space or save on salaries, but rather have the reason behind working remotely is to have a diverse team that is located around the world or in different parts, and includes different backgrounds, different nationalities, different stories. And it's really great if the company offers that, because it provides this great opportunity for the product that you develop to be really diverse and speak to different kinds of people, but also opens up all kinds of possibilities for you personally to broaden your perspective and challenge your worldview. So these are things that I think are important when looking for remote work.
I love all of the points that you just made. I mean, so many stand out for all of us, especially around salary and the meetups and paying for the home office. Yeah, you really still are a part of that company. That was wonderful. Okay, I will pass the question to you.
Yeah, totally second everything that Julie said there. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, awesome. Yeah, so completely, yeah, second all that. The one thing I would add to that is just, it also has to be like the things that you just look for in a non-remote position, right? Like, is the company doing work that you're interested in? Is your role going to be interesting and motivating enough that you can like be motivated at home to work on the projects because you are like, removed from an office and remotely? And then also like what the relationship with your manager is going to be more important as well. Like, how's the communication there? Can you see yourself like having a good relationship there as well? And just like how, like, try to get like signal while you're in an interview with like your other teammates, because like being able to communicate with them is going to be really, really important. So just like looking for flags like that. Like, it can be really miserable if you don't get along with your team, and being remote makes it quite a bit harder. The other thing here is like, I think we've been like talking about fully distributed companies so far, and that's not always the case. Like at Mapbox, I'm one of few people who work remotely, where a lot of people do work in the office. And those positions are out there where, company does have a head office, but some people have the choice of working remotely. The thing to look there is, are you going to be supported, like, and not treated as like a second class employee, right? So just be upfront about that. And I would honestly like pass a job if you don't feel like you have that support, because you could miss out on like promotions or like new opportunities, and just be like forgotten on the side sometimes. So yeah, that's probably it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And you kind of touched on it, but are there any other red flags or things that people should look for as far as companies that they shouldn't join that might not do remote well?
Yeah, I mean, just doing like some research, like is it Glassdoor? I think has like reviews and stuff. So I usually read those, and you can pretty much get like a good picture of what's going on. Another one is if the company doesn't have an established HR team. To me, that's usually like a red flag, because like you can't surface some issues that could be like in the culture in the company or whatnot. Those are like the things that stand out to me right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Julia, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think Saba pretty much covered it all. It's great when companies offer some sort of a trial period. Again, automatic, for example, in order to get the job here, you have to work for 4 weeks on a trial project, and you're sort of embedded on a team where you potentially will be working on. So it kind of works two ways, and the company is looking at how you work, but also you see the company culture. So it's, you know, it's great if the company you are looking to work at provides this sort of opportunity. Yes, it may sound long. 4 weeks is a long period of time, but also it's a really great kind of initial investment and time that you have to make if you're going to be working in this company for a long time. And yeah, through this kind of trial period, if it's offered, maybe a shorter one, but still, if it's offered, it's a, yeah, it's a good opportunity to look for things like Saba mentioned, and get that kind of a glimpse of the culture.
Oh, it sounds like you both work for such great companies who are really doing this right. Is there anything else you want to share about what you love about working remote, or your favorite parts of that part of work?
Sure. So I love working remotely. There are, of course, some cons to it, which I guess we'll get to them later. But I do not plan to, you know, go back to non-remote working environment anytime soon, at least. So for me, definitely the number one is the flexibility that remote work provides, and that basically means for us, it's creating our own schedule. So for me, I can work 9 to 5, I can work 12 to 8, I can work 3 hours in the morning, take 2 hours break, go, you know, go back, work 5 more hours. So I really like that flexibility. Interestingly enough, though, I actually still work 9 to 5 just because it works for me. But knowing that I can, you know, sometimes you need to take a doctor's appointment, for example, in the middle of the day. We really don't even, like, we just need to tell our team, like, hey, I'm going to go for a doctor's appointment. I'll be back in 2 hours and I'll extend my day. I really like this flexibility that remote work provides. Some of my coworkers go exercise during the day and they take this 2-3 hours break. I also love that I can take my work anywhere I go, which is basically work while you travel. I actually lived through this experience of from United States to London, UK, and back to United States while staying working remotely at Automatic. I actually spent 2019 in London. My husband got a job opportunity in London, and we were able to relocate because I could take my job with me, and it was super helpful. And now we're back to New York City. But if you're not working remotely, it's pretty much impossible to do something like this. And finally, the last thing that I probably love the most is the international team that I have. On my team, I have 2 people in Brazil, 1 person in Denmark, 1 person in India, 1 person in Spain. And it's really amazing to have these co-workers with you who kind of go through the same kind of work that you do every day, but you see them working a little bit differently through the prismatic perspective of how they approach it. And sometimes it's based on how they grew up or how they used to do things. And it's really interesting. It also allows me to challenge, again, I mentioned that before, but it allows me to challenge my views, because sometimes we're so stuck into how we used to do things because of how we grew up. And that also, in turn, allows me to develop this sort of kind of like an empathy for people of different backgrounds. It's really amazing. So my experience of working remotely had been a really great personal development kind of process as well, which I love.
Yeah.
So yeah, these are the 3 things for me
Yeah.
that I love the most.
That's wonderful. Saba, anything else to share?
Yeah, I second the flexibility. I love just not being like, you know, restricted to one space from like 9 to 5. I do like having the flexibility and being able to set my schedule. So that's great. The one big thing for me too is I'm Canadian. So I get to stay and live in Canada, you know, but still work with some really interesting and exciting companies that are based out of, you know, the Valley. So it really gives me the opportunity to, you know, work on really exciting projects that I probably wouldn't have the chance to if I worked with a Canadian-based company. So for me, that's like a huge plus. And then Also, I just find myself a lot more productive when I'm working from home versus the office, just because, you know, I'm sure we've all worked in like open concept offices that are super loud and noisy and you get tapped on the shoulder constantly. And I found it really hard to focus in those environments, especially when I'm working on a really hard problem. Like you do really need a quiet space that you can just focus, and I can provide that for myself where I didn't find that in an office. Um, and then the other part is it's actually kind of crazy how much it reduces office politics. Working remotely, you can really just focus on the work. And then one thing that I found, as just as a, you know, a woman in tech or like a female engineer, a lot of some of like the not so great parts about being a woman in tech, like I found them more prominent in an office where I don't have to deal with them as much when I'm at home. So that's been really awesome.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. I'm sure there are a lot of people that are identifying with that right now. Okay, and then aside from that is, you know, we talked about what we love. To move to the cons, are there any things that have really surprised you or that you would say, hey, this is what you should watch out for if you're going into this? That said, it's funny because now most people are working remote right now, but maybe it's only been a few weeks. But yeah, Julia, any thoughts?
Sure. So felt like an echo. Okay, it's back to normal. So yeah, so something that you mentioned now, Melinda, about how everyone is working remotely and kind of got a, okay, not everyone, but some people have an opportunity to work remotely and got a glimpse of how it could be. I wanted to mention that this is sort of not, or at least for me, it's not a typical work from home environment still at the moment, because my husband is working from home and we're sort of stuck here all the time, can't really, you know, go out somewhere. So I'm kind of worried that people will have a wrong perception about working remotely, because again, this is not like a business as usual at the moment, even for those who have been working remotely for a long time. But what I don't like about working remotely, and something that bothers me, is the isolation, basically. Yes, it's great. Yes, you have the flexibility and all kinds of things that we just shared before, but this sense of isolation, for me personally, it's still a big thing. The positives and the cons of working remotely still overpower that kind of negative part of working remotely, but I do still, you know, have it. It's with me. It doesn't really go anywhere, or it didn't go anywhere yet. Uh, and I especially feel it when, for example, my team ships a new feature, or we develop something, we've been working so hard on it for so long, and we want to go out and celebrate, and we can't do this, right? Because everybody is around the world. So we kind of, you know, wait until the next meetup comes around and you know, celebrate in person, but excitement is not there yet, because you kind of like, you know, want to go to a bar, you want to go to celebrate or do something fun together. I feel that sometimes in my day-to-day work, I feel it as well. So it's definitely, I personally still crave that human connection and interaction.
Yeah, definitely. Saba.
Yeah, 100% the same con. I think especially now at like these challenging times, like I'm definitely going to feel it more, because I used to travel like every couple months to go and like see my teammates, or you know, celebrate like a feature that shipped or whatnot. So that was, you come back like really motivated and pumped to like work on the next thing. So I'm definitely going to miss that. And then another thing, like when I was working from an office, like I did make a lot of friends, which, you know, you don't really make remotely as easily. It just takes longer because you see people less frequently. So yeah, that social aspect is really, really hard to recreate in a remote situation. But there are ways to deal with those. Again, like they're going to be harder with COVID, like just making sure that, you know, you get out of the house every day and like go maybe like to a coffee shop or a co-working space for a couple hours, just so that you can get those social interactions from other people, maybe not, you know, people you work with. And then if there are any like meetups or like a tech community in town or in your city, like make sure you join those and like try to get those social connections that way. But yeah, unfortunately, the social part can be very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all really feeling that right now. And I would love to find out if you do have tips for staying connected just in your normal work from home routines, and you threw out a couple, but also right now, I mean, both of you have so much experience working remote, and is there anything that you've kind of learned or developed during this time that the rest of us could benefit from? Yeah, we'll start with Saba this time. Yeah.
Yeah, so one thing I've been doing is forcing myself to at least just walk around the block every morning. And I take like my mug of coffee and like literally like simulate like a morning like commute kind of. It kind of just like helps like give structure to your day and like get it started. And then also with lunch, like I don't know if like you have a balcony or just like somewhere where you can just like sit outside for a little bit, like just grab your lunch and like sit there, just to because I know like I can have the tendency to just sit at my screen and like eat lunch, so just like trying not to do that would help. And if you have the space to like go out and exercise and get some fresh air, that works really well for me. As for then staying connected with the rest of the team, like one thing that my team has done is we created a Slack channel that's called like social channel. So it's just a place where you can like talk to people not about work, and that's been kind of cool. And yeah, and then I think that's all I can think of actually right now. I forgot what I was going to say.
It's a lot to think about, and we're all, especially right now, trying to figure out how to manage it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, and I think like I think a big part of it is okay, like to just acknowledge that it is hard and
Yeah.
like be okay with it and just try to do your best. And I think as long as you have a team where everyone is trying to do their best and support one another, like you'll make it through the end. But yeah, it is hard for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Julia, any thoughts?
Same thing what Saba mentioned, and I agree with every point she said. And I also try to kind of go out in the balcony and get fresh air. That's just in terms of getting that outside kind of space that we don't have right now, or like opportunity to be outside that we don't have as much at this time. So I don't really have much to add there. In terms of staying connected to my coworkers outside of work, it's also similar experience. We also have a bunch of channels, which we call kind of like a water cooler channels, and we have them we have them dedicated to different interests. So there is one for those who likes music, who likes photography. There is one for people who like knitting and painting and all kinds of things. Also, something that our events team, they usually organize meetups, but cannot at the moment. They actually have been organizing this kind of like connecting people kind of meetups online for everyone in the company. And there was one session when there were several DJs playing, like doing the stream. These were our co-workers, but we were kind of like trying to recreate this environment as if we were met. There was a person who were playing a guitar, and there was a painting class. So things like this, like these times kind of force you to be creative, right? And it's really amazing what came out of it, and something that we actually didn't think of before. And I'm sure some of the things that we're doing right now will actually stay, even though when we go back to normal.
Yeah, that's true. You don't usually share all of those creative activities at work, so there are some benefits. Oh, that's great. I love it. Okay, and then another big challenge that is hard is just staying productive, staying motivated when you are in isolation. So yeah, I would love to talk about that and hear any thoughts you have. Yeah, we can talk with Saba, please.
Yeah, this is This is a great one. I think a huge part of like being successful at working remotely is knowing yourself. So if you are a self-motivated, self-driven person, like you will have a lot more success than someone who is not. So because there is no manager like sitting next to you, there is no one checking in with you every like half an hour or a couple hours. It really has to be your drive and your motivation, and you need to like, you are isolated to a certain extent, so it does need to come from you. I am like that. I am very self-motivated and self-driven, because I choose companies that I'm really interested in and like love the projects that I'm working on, so that's where I get the motivation from. So that's why I said before, like, it's really important to make sure that when you do take a remote position, like make sure the motivation is there, because it can be pretty difficult if it's not. Checklists are great. I have, so in Gmail, like there's Keep. I have like tons of checklists in there. That's how I keep it organized. I even like sometimes do hourly checklist when I'm finding it especially hard to get started. And then just setting boundaries, like being like, okay, I'm working from 7 till 3 today. That's it. Like making sure you step away from your computer, because you can get burnt out pretty quickly if you're just, you know, spending days on end working late, which can be really easy to do working from home. But yeah, just setting yourself like some weekly goals or whatnot that are work related. Like, you know, I need to get these 3 PRs out. Those will, you know, quantifiable goals that you can just like keep yourself on track. But then also this comes into like what to look for in a team, like making sure that your team has procedures and like processes around like check-ins and projects. Like we do daily check-ins with our teams, and then we do 2-week sprint planning. And so you're always holding each other accountable to like actually getting those things done, and you have a sprint review. So, you know, if you're getting demotivated and like not finishing your tasks and not getting stuff done, like it gets surfaced pretty quickly. So yeah, it's just a combination of both, really, like the company having the structure to make sure that, you know, you're accountable and delivering stuff, and then you as a person making sure that you're showing up every day and motivating yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I also love that I just learned I'm not the only person using Google Keep. So thank you for making sure I'm not in a club alone there.
That makes 3 of us.
Oh, yeah.
I love Google Keep too.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, Julia, what have you learned from this?
Yeah, I can definitely relate to everything that Saba already mentioned. I actually thought a lot about this. Was one of the most, I guess, difficult questions for me to think about when I was preparing, because I also kind of, I'll go back to what Saba said at the beginning, that you have to be self-driven and self-motivated. So it's a big part of this job. You really have to be interested in what you're doing, and you kind of want to have this kind of a desire to keep working, passion towards, you know, your work and the work you produce, the product that you're working on, and so forth. So this one is kind of hard to train or hard to teach, because kind of this discipline comes to you throughout life, right? Throughout a series of different events. So I don't have any tips in terms of how to, you know, how to become like this. Maybe just, I guess, try to become disciplined. It's kind of like easier said than done, right? But some of the other things, more like tricks, that kind of you trick yourself to become disciplined in a way. Similar things that Saba mentioned. I personally have a desk where I work, and this is sort of, you know, my working place, right? So I don't spend time in the evening after work at this desk. So this desk for me means this is work time, this is workspace. When I'm at it, I must work and I must produce. When I get off, I can relax. So this is like one of the things that I trick myself with. Creating a routine and sticking to it is very important. Yes, remote work means you can work 2 hours here, you can work 2 hours there and whatnot at night. that's fine. But I feel like as long you must keep doing the same hours every day in order to create this kind of a notion. Okay, now it's work time. Now it's, I must work now. I must produce. Dressing up. So I find a lot of I found a lot of articles now came up online since the COVID situation, like how people dress up for work and like how they keep up the same routine and everything. And so I think this is kind of personal. It's very subjective. Personally, I don't really dress up like how I would go to dress up to the office. I would probably go dress up more. But I also don't work in the pajamas. So there is a lot of also, right, articles like how people work in the pajamas and they work remotely out of the bed. Like for me, this is a no-no. There is no way I can do any work out of my bed in the pajamas. For me, that means relaxed time, sleep time, night time, or whatever morning. So I actually dress up to a good, comfortable clothes that I wear at home. I don't know, t-shirts, hoodies, something that works for me. Could be different for everyone. And also something, I have this trick actually when I work, I need to pull my hair up to a ponytail. For me, it basically means like, okay, I am like rolling my sleeves and I'm ready to work. So for me, that's a ponytail. Again, it could be different things for different people. And something more on the team side of things, on the company kind of culture side of things. Also, second, what Saba mentioned, it's important to have the tools set up for working remotely. The company has to provide this basically structure. How do you keep yourself accountable to yourself and to the team, daily stand-ups, weekly check-ins. We have two weekly meetings with our team, for example, and I have a one-on-one with my team lead every 2 weeks. So these sort of things kind of keep you in check and keep you motivated. So it's not like you're just there out in the dark, right? Like working by yourself. You're actually pretty connected to your team throughout the day. So it's sort of hard to, fall behind. I mean, we all have the days, bad days, but in general, it's working pretty well.
Oh, yeah, I love it. Everything you guys said about kind of finding those routines, and there's, of course, process, and then just making sure you're doing something you love. That all resonates. I do have one little trick that I do if I'm really not motivated, but there's a project as well. Just kind of trick myself. Well, I'll work on it for 20 minutes. I can always take 20 minutes for everything. And then if I sit down, then 2 hours later, I'm really, wow, I got through so much. But yeah, so many good tips. And we talked about staying connected. We touched on this a bit, but work-life balance. Anything else that you have specifically to add on how we can best manage that? And we'll start, Saba.
Yeah, this is and again a really good topic. It really fluctuates for me. Like I'm sure like being realistic here, like you're never gonna be able to like work 9 to 5 like every day, pretty consistently. There are gonna be some weeks where you're working longer because there's a project deadline. So just keeping tabs on that makes sure that you have like an overall really good work-life balance. Like, if you're coming off of a really hard project, you're keeping tabs on that week, you're like, oh man, I'm like working like way longer than usual. Being able to like talk to your manager and like with being like, okay, can I take like less hours, the next week? So making sure that the balance is really there, and giving yourself some time to recover, because you do need to recover from like really hard sprints like that. Like if someone tells you that you don't, like that's a lie. Like your brain is going to be fried and you do need to like take some time to recuperate. The other part of this is also like taking days off and like making sure you are taking those days off. Like I know a lot of companies these days have like unlimited vacation, like that's the new trend. But there's a lot of studies that actually show that companies that offer that, people don't take as much vacation as like, let's say when it's set to 3 weeks. So just making sure that, you're looking out for yourself and your health, both mentally and like physically, but then also like the relationships with the people like in your life too. It is like, it's balance, right? Like the word is there. You just have to make sure that you're constantly looking for it. Because I really don't think you can rely on a company to provide you with it, because they're always going to ask as much as possible from you. So this really has to be like you looking out for yourself. And then if if your team or the company that you work for does not recognize this, and you find yourself constantly pushed to out of balance, then it's probably not the right fit and it's not worth it. Because I've seen a lot of colleagues that like work really hard for 2 years and then get super burnt out, and that's not that's not a place that you want to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that tip that support has to come from the company as well. Julia.
Again, second what Saba mentioned on this topic, it's a really difficult one. It took me a while to actually get to that kind of work and life balance when I first started to work remotely, because your first experience is when you have never done it before. You want to prove yourself to the company because they also still don't know you. And maybe there is no even a pressure, right? Like the pressure doesn't come from them, the pressure comes from you. It's at least that's the case for me. I always tend to have this sort of expectations for myself of what I should be doing, and that's a very difficult thing to break. And even sometimes today I still fall into the same kind of trap, but I just learned how to recognize it sooner by now, so I stop myself. But basically that means, yes, definitely not overwork. It's very important to, like, 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, and you close computer, and even if things are not done, you have to step away. Again, this is something that I'm still struggling with sometimes, because the work is always there. There's always something to do, and it's a hard one, but something, again, back to discipline, maybe it's one of those things. I also try not to work on weekends. It's also very easy during the week to think like, okay, I didn't have enough time to do this. I'll catch up on the weekend. I always have a weekend. That's a really not good thing to do. And so for me, that's a rule that I set up for myself. I will do it next week, but I will not work on the weekends because they're there for work, to rest, sorry. And similar to also what Sabo mentioned about taking those days off when needed, our company is actually the one that provides unlimited vacation. And we are encouraged to take time off as much as we need. And I also I can see that kind of trend, especially in among new people who join the company. They actually don't take as much vacation as they should. And our company recommends 4 weeks, but it's up to every person. Because when they provide unlimited vacation, it's basically the responsibility is now on you to manage your days off. It's no longer their responsibility. And so you kind of think, oh, I shouldn't be taking these, I haven't done enough, and so forth. So it's also one of the things that's very important to do, to actually recognize your work, praise yourself, and award yourself, with these days off and with this benefit that the company provides. Is important. But yes, basically it's kind of like a collaboration between you and the company. They should be providing you the structure to be able to do that, but you also have to take your part, because they don't know what you need, right? Like you have to tell them basically what you have to take these days off, or go to your manager and things like that.
Yeah, managing that guilt is an ongoing process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're just about ready to, open it up for questions. We do have some resources to share for those who are already working in remote positions, which you'll get in the slides. But yeah, we'll go ahead and open it up. You can either send questions in the chat, or you can just turn off your microphone and now take the opportunity to ask us whatever your burning questions are.
Hey, this is Charu. I have one question. I am a data engineer. I have worked with few companies, and there was a culture for the work from home environment also. So I have have a little experience on the remote working side, but I am still not able to understand how it is typical work from home different from the remote work which you guys are like explaining.
I didn't fully understand that last. Oh, okay, looks like that.
I think it was breaking up a bit,
Yeah.
the connection towards the
Let me
end.
try to repeat my question then. I have few years of work from home experience, but I wanted to understand little more how it is different from a typical work from home than this remote work. Because everything we manage from home when we are working from home also, but how this remote work is completely different from what we do at work from home.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I guess you're asking like if, you know, you can occasionally work from home versus completely remote.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's a little bit different in that when you're just like working from home, like one day a week or a couple of days a week, is that you still have that attachment to an office and like you're still like really part of an office with just a couple days that are remote. So some of the issues that we see in fully remote work, like isolation, um, don't really surface there. And then like I had the option of working from home a couple days a week at like one of my previous jobs, and it did feel very different because you're not really fully remote yet. So some of the cons of like working remotely just weren't there. And then I also found that um, when I worked from home, like the couple of days a week, I actually wasn't as productive as from an office because like it's like kind of like a treat to work from home versus like it is your routine. So yeah, so there are pros and cons to like doing it both ways, but they do have different problems and different pros and cons for sure.
Thank you, Sabah. I got my answer.
Julia, anything to add?
I've never had an opportunity like this to work a couple of days from home in any of the previous companies, but just something that I can share, I guess, from my family. My husband works in a company that allows him, I mean, in a regular kind of world, allows him to work a couple of days from home. And I see similar things that what Saba already mentioned. It's more of a, like a treat, like maybe you don't feel well or you don't feel like dressing up and go somewhere, take a subway, you can stay home. And also, I think the biggest challenge also are the tools for working from home are not really at that scale when you're fully working from home. Like for example, there is a set of tools that we use in a company like Slack, Zoom. We have our internal tool called P2, letter P number 2, which is our tool for collaboration. Like when we discuss on different things and take decision on different things. These tools, not all the set of tools is ready for these situations when you just work couple of days a week from home. So I feel like it's not quite the same.
Definitely. Yeah, any other questions? Well, perhaps no other questions. Okay. Well then, Julia, oh, hello.
Hello. Sorry, I was on mute. Hi. I had one last question, if that's okay.
Please.
Yeah, I was wondering because you're now in kind of, if I can call it like this like remote community, because I see a growing number of all remote companies. I was wondering if you have ways in which you grow your personal network, and how would you like meet people from other remote companies and connect with them?
Yeah, so I know that there are quite a few communities. There's a remote woman Slack group, and there's also a Facebook group for people sharing and supporting each other to find remote jobs. we can add those to the slides, of course. But Saba, Julia, anything else to add?
I actually can't add anything for like the current like COVID situation. Before this, like conferences were like great for that. Meetups were really, really awesome for that as well. Yeah, I would actually say those two are like my biggest source of network or like meeting people from other companies. It's a little harder now with COVID. I think, yeah, Melinda's right on there that maybe like Slack channels or groups that, you know, you can share, you can join virtually. That's probably the way to do it.
Same for me, similar experience. I find conferences and meetups very helpful, and that's, I mean, outside of our company meetups and company-sponsored events, right, or company-only events. So Automatic is it's a product behind WordPress, and our CEO is a co-founder of WordPress. And so we are part of this kind of a bigger ecosystem of WordPress conferences and WordPress meetups. And that community alone is fully remote, open source and fully remote. So there is a great chance to, you know, there is a meetup or WordPress meetup probably in about every major and even non-major city around the world. So it's a really great way to connect with people. I often go to meetups, WordPress meetups in New York City, and I'm a part of this community and I really, really love it. Actually, it's one of the ways for me to kind of break this sort of isolation. I almost feel like I work with my coworkers because we are on the same project, WordPress. It's just, you know, different people working on it. Maybe try to, like, one of the goals could be finding a product that has this culture, that has the community, maybe that you can connect with, that's also remote. I know it's kind of challenging, but definitely there are opportunities out there. And many remote companies even create this culture around them. And conferences is a great way to connect. I found it amazing when you meet somebody in the community, you know, somewhere in London, and then the next time you meet them in Spain, and it's the same person, and you actually don't work with them, but you know, you meet with them sometimes, and it's amazing. It's fascinating. It's like the world is all of a sudden so small yet so big.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a couple of questions related to finding jobs during COVID-19 and shelter in, and we are going to be sharing with you a list of over 1,500 companies that's updated live, giving their hiring status, whether they're on a hiring freeze or whether they're hiring, to help you kind of gear your job search towards companies that are actively looking for people. There are still some, and there are a few organizations that are working really hard to get job seekers connected with companies who still need people as well. So we'll share that too. But yeah, that wraps up our time here. I will pass it back to Patience to just wrap up with us today.
Thank you so much, Melinda and Saba and Julia, for all the insights that you shared. I'm sure we're all going to find them really, really helpful as we try to manage our careers during this period. So I'm just going to make sure that everybody who joined will have access to the slides that were shared during this session. And I am looking forward to seeing all of you when we host our next virtual event that is related to remote work. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Patience.
Thanks, Patience. Thanks for having us. It was a really awesome event.
Yeah.
Thank you, Patience. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone for joining, and thanks for questions. It was very interesting.
Bye.
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 Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
See you at work tomorrow, Julia.
Yes, thank you. This is Linda, my coworker. I'm so happy to see you. Thank you for joining. I didn't know you were here. Okay, I'll ping you.
Bye.